We're in the process of partnering with a few brokers at the moment. This is a very new space for us. So it's only like these conversations have only started happening as of like the last few weeks.
How do you manage the tough side of leadership, in essence, of accountability, performance, productivity, delivering? How do you balance all of this? We have these bonds, these personal relationships with one another, but then still keeping people accountable to deliver at the same time.
We were trying to grow as a business, get the right people on board. There was people stuff that was ultimately falling on my place, and it was affecting my ability to execute on other things. So it was an intentional decision to make sure that I had time to really, grow the business as quickly as possible.
What you're underpinning within this is that on the employer side, not only is this, a great thing to do for the health and well-being of your people, but just at a cost level, is doing this is going to reduce their spend on their medical aid and their health plans. It's going to reduce your spend on the same things depending on your benefits policy. And then for the insurer side, is that in terms of your claims, it's going to reduce that too.
Who is the right person to bring on, and can they execute in the way we need them to execute? And if they're doing that from the northern suburbs in Cape Town or somewhere in Joburg or somewhere in London, it doesn't really matter. Like if people want to be at home and just be executing, it's also totally fine.
Someone who's really good at their role is also going to have higher standards of themselves. They're going to have higher expectations. And it's besides the knowledge and skills that they bring, there just is a performance mindset and mentality towards the fact that it's like, I do well and I produce well, and I know I do. But with that is I expect that of myself, but I also expect that of the people around me. Hello and welcome back to the Founder Files. Today, I've got another epic round 2 episode with you, and this is with Chris Bruchhausen from Strove. It's been about 2.5 years since we did the last episode, and a lot has changed, a lot has scaled in that business. So excited to share that with you today. So the episode really gets into how the business has evolved, not only in terms of the market, going directly to employers, now partnering with insurance providers, and really how that's starting to unlock a huge amount of scale. Spoiler alert, Strove is likely to 8x their number of users in the next 6 months because of these partnerships. So that's obviously super exciting. But again, we chat about what it's like to manage this business from London, have a distributed team in Cape Town and in London as well. How he walks the talk of being a busy scale-up founder whilst also being healthy and building an amazing health-based culture. And we just really talk a lot about the product and the business and how this amazing piece of innovation is really, really working. So if you're really keen on health, if you're keen on innovation, and if you're keen on kind of culture and leadership and managing a business across the UK and South Africa, well, there's loads of this for you, right? And if you are not subscribed to the Founder Files, then you're going to miss more conversations like this. So make sure that you're following and subscribing now. It's the best way to support the podcast. Now let's get into this conversation with Chris and how he's scaling Strove. Welcome to the Founder Files, the podcast that's like eavesdropping on a conversation with a successful entrepreneur over a fireside chat. Join me, Cameron Coots, through this unique experience of unfiltered stories and insights from scaling founders around the globe as they share their ups, downs, and everything in between. Chris, welcome back to the Founder Files, man. It's been a couple of years, and I can't wait to get back into the story of what's happened the past 2.5 years plus with Strove.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to be back. Good chatting to you. It feels like it's been a lifetime since we last chatted, so excited to be back.
Yeah, I mean, also the rate of change in both of our lives, I think that the lifetime is accurate comparing to how other people can experience things. But dude, you've won some awards, right? You've grown and more than doubled the team, right? You've started partnering with health plans and you've done a lot, right? So I think before really getting into like a lot that's happened in the past couple of years, for those that don't know you, right? Just a bit of an introduction to Chris, a little bit of an introduction to Strove.
Sure. So my name is Chris Bruchhausen. I'm the founder and CEO of Strove. So Strove is a preventive health and engagement platform. Essentially, what we do is we empower both employers as well as insurers to improve their employees or members' health and well-being, while also providing them with a whole bunch of data, insights, and analytics into the health and well-being of their people. So we operate very much on the preventative side of health. So ultimately, like, we want people to build healthy lifestyle habits and sustain them over a period of time. Um, Started the company a little over 4 years ago. Um, and yeah, as you mentioned, we started more recently working with health plans and insurance businesses. Up until kind of like the beginning of this year, actually, we were mainly focused on the corporate employer markets, but we now have sort of branched out into this insurer space. Um, and yeah, it's been a journey, but it's been exciting. And yeah, it feels like we kind of only really getting started now, to be honest. So
I mean, yeah, I don't want to bring in too many spoilers right now, but what I know what's coming for you in the rest of this year, it's I can imagine why you feel like you're only getting started. Uh, but Chris, man, like obviously we know each other. We knew each other even before Metavolve and Strove even existed, right? So, like, just talk to me about why you kind of started Strove. I mean, a little bit of your context. I mean, having your like SA colors, you're a very high performance athlete. Like, there's a lot of kind of context there. So just chat to me about that context and why you started Strove.
sure. So I guess maybe a little bit of background on myself might help paint the picture. So yeah, pretty much since I could walk, sports has always been pretty much core to who I am. So first it was cricket, then it was tennis, and I moved on to golf. Went to go play golf in the States, then came back, then took up sport of triathlon, became completely obsessed with that. And then when I moved to London, I started running a bit more seriously and sort of dropped the triathlon thing. And so, yeah, throughout my life, being active and playing sports is, like I said, been pretty much core to who I am. So, I'd always kind of been thinking about, if I were to build a business, um, how I could, blend that part of my life with, um, a more recent sort of passion, which is technology and the impact that that can have. Um, and then, yeah, it was about 4 years ago, or a little over 4 years ago now, there was an opportunity to build something at that intersection. And it was largely off the back of sort of what was going on in the world at that time. Started the business during COVID, and there was obviously a bunch of pressure that was being placed on particularly like HR teams and wellbeing teams and in corporates to make sure they were taking care of their employees' health, because COVID was obviously bringing to the surface, the kinds of issues that I guess at a company wide level that having an unhealthy workforce can have. So we thought there was an opportunity to build something that really, that gave a tool, provided a tool to HR teams and people teams, etc., to help them improve their employees' health and well-being, but then also gave them insights into what was actually happening from a health perspective. And that was kind of the genesis of the Strove idea. And yeah, that was kind of in March 2021 when we first launched. So yeah, it was very much like wanting to build something that was kind of at the intersection of two passions. The one was something that's, like I said, it's been core to pretty much who I am. And then the technology side was kind of a more recent passion. So yeah, that's kind of how the idea came about.
Cool, man. So obviously starting during COVID, I mean, the nature of what is that you're doing around health, around well-being, as someone who really values my health, like I see the importance of this, but it's very much this, like everyone's heard this topic of value proposition of vitamin versus painkiller. Anything that's preventative, it's like even quite literally in the medical field is like vitamin, right? So how has this kind of shifted? Because I think the timing during COVID was really well timed because you have something that would usually be a vitamin is now a painkiller, but it's actually something that's really emphasized. But that's kind of like tapered off since. I mean, has that been the case? Have you still find that there's like a high level of demand for this? Has it been more of like a sales approach? Is it like yeah, talk to me about how selling this started and how it's kind of changed with direct to employers. Let's park the health plans for now. I just want to know that journey first.
Sure. So I guess maybe just in terms of how the value proposition, the story that we're telling has changed. So when we first started, it was kind of the pitch was we were very much like a well-being app, and the objective was, at least right at the beginning, we were pretty much just focused on getting people to be a little more physically active. And so we were very much like a well-being app that incentivized people to go for a run and go and track their step data as an example. So that was kind of like the first version of the product. How things have evolved since then is we definitely don't position ourselves as a well-being platform now. We're very much like a preventive health platform. And the difference is we aren't just focused on, while getting people active and getting them moving is still, a part of what we do. We've gone a lot deeper to not only just focus on other health verticals, but also, we started to branch out into, if someone has a specific health condition, we aren't a clinical solution. So we're not going to do like diagnostics and things like that. But if someone has, let's say they may be struggling with their weight as an example, or maybe they have, um, high blood pressure, we've built like this concept of pathways in our product where, because we have a pretty good understanding of someone's like health profile, based on all the different data points that we have, we can almost like suggest to them whether or not they should go into, let's say like a weight well-being pathway if they need to lose weight, as an example, or if they want to lose weight. And so that's more like preventive health versus just being like a well-being plan. Um, a lot of that strategy was also driven by the feedback that we were getting from not just on the insurer side, but also on the corporate employer side, where and it's more relevant for the much bigger employers where they are offering, like medical aid to their employees, or they're offering health insurance to their employees. The cost of healthcare is obviously skyrocketing, and a big driver or drivers of that increase in healthcare spend is people not being particularly healthy. And in terms of like the actual health conditions that are driving a lot of those costs, a big one is people being overweight. Another is what you would call musculoskeletal issues. So, and that's another pathway that is not live on our platform, but it's something that we're currently working on now, where, people are having to go for surgery because they've got, chronic low back pain, as an example. A lot of that stuff, those particular issues, whether it's like musculoskeletal or helping people lose weight, or let's say, trying to get someone to lower their A1C levels if they're pre-diabetic. A lot of that can be done by taking like the building blocks of what we've been building over the last 3 to 4 years, and like almost like repackaging it to be a little bit more specific, to a certain health outcome. And what I mean by that is, from a, let's say from like a musculoskeletal perspective, a lot of those issues can be solved by getting people to lose a bit of weight, be a little bit more active, etc., which is kind of like our focus, what has been our focus for the last few years. And so that's kind of why I say we, in terms of how the evolution of the value prop and how things have progressed, we see ourselves as less of a sort of well-being play and more of like this. We use the term, this, we have preventive health operating system. So there's multiple components to it. It's the physical component, mental component, nutritional components, etc. And then we can also triage people into these pathways for more specific kinds of, I don't want to say care, because care is not the right word, but um, if you want to call it care, that kind of implies what we're doing. We're taking people on a journey to help them achieve a specific health outcome.
Dude, I was excited to do this interview even before this because I knew the evolution's been there. Now I'm more excited because, like, based on, again, my value system and all of this, but it's really this, you're empowering individuals to really manage their health in a much better way. And you're kind of helping employers help their employees do this too. And I think let's just jump straight into it because, like, in the don't want to like lead the spoiler on too much because it gives a lot of important context. But like you mentioning these insurers, mentioning these health plans, and so you kind of got this like perfect like preventative health triangle, and also amazing distribution model connected with the users, the employers, and the health plans. So just paint that picture for me, and then I'll get into some of my incessant curiosity in a minute.
So I guess from a distribution perspective, in terms of, how we get the product into people's hands. So up until recently, we had like the standard B2B sales and distribution model. We would, we've got a sales team internally that does outreach to corporate customers. And, we, it's the standard like lead gen, bring customers to the top of the funnel, and then, close them in sort of like a B2B structure and then bring the employees on board. The insurer side is a bit more, I guess it is still B2B, but the way that model works is we partner with an insurer and then they will kind of open the product up to their member base and in some cases to the beneficiaries of those members. So I guess the two are kind of similar. Um, the third one that's actually recently opened up as well, and it's not really an area that we were going to like actively pursue. It's more just kind of off the back of organic conversations that have been happening, is partnering with broker networks. So the broker kind of sits as this trusted advisor between the insurer and the corporate customer. This is largely, at least in the conversations that we're having, largely sort of oriented around big corporates. So you have like a big like tier one insurer, you've got the broker, and then you've got the big corporate employer. And so some of the conversations that we've been having more recently is around partnering with the broker, who then wants to they will open up our platform to their corporate employer or set of corporate employers, because they'll have multiple corporate employers as customers. The value proposition there is the brokers trying to differentiate their service and value proposition to their customers as one part. The other is they want to have a view of the risk profile of each one of their customers, because they obviously are underwriting risk, etc. So um, they they don't again, this is just based on the conversations we're having. Some of them don't have like a comprehensive view of what that risk profile looks like. And so by having a product like ours and making it available to their customers, they can actually get an understanding of, what is at a group level, what is the BMI makeup of the specific cohort of employees? What is the makeup of, how many people have hypertension, as an example. So all that data we can sort of get on our platform. And obviously all of it is like anonymized and aggregated. So you'll never be able to, attribute a data point to an individual employee or member. But at a group level, you can get some really interesting insights. And so from a broker's perspective, you might, if I'm a broker, I might be able to see, okay, this specific company has 20% of their employee base has hypertension and 50% are overweight. And so what the broker can then do, if they have access to that data, is they can then become like this trusted advisor to their customer and say, this is the data that I'm seeing, and off the back of that, almost like take like a consultative, that's the right word, approach with their customers and work, instead of just like selling an insurance product to them, they can go to them and say, okay, cool, this is what I'm seeing from a data perspective and from a health perspective. I've got X, Y, and Z solution available through this partner, i.e. Strove, that we can bolt onto the offering that you already have available to improve these specific health outcomes. And this is going to potentially be the impact, whether it's like a cost saving perspective or, if you're looking at healthcare costs or premium costs or whatever, this is the potential impact that it can have on your business. And so that sort of a more recent channel that has opened up. Some of those conversations have been super interesting, just understanding that world in a bit more detail.
So do you have like a practical case study you can take me through? Like what would be an example of something that would happen at a group level? That would be something that a broker would say, okay, cool, we can put together this package or this solution. I'm understanding what you're saying at a conceptual level. Do you have an example?
So we don't have any, we're in the process of partnering with a few brokers at the moment. This is a very new space for us. So it's only like these conversations have only started happening as of like the last few weeks. But I can give you an example of at least some of the things that we've been discussing and how they could potentially work.
Yeah, what I want to basically know is like, what are some of these like these data case studies that you have and that you have access to that's made their eyes suddenly go wide, and like what's really grabbed their interest of something that they can use with this?
So, I mean, we've got a few different case studies that we've put together. I think what was more interesting was around, like we've got this dictionary internally where it's just like a rudimentary Google sheet, all the different data points that we can collect, at a group level and at an individual level, through like all the different wearable integrations, activity tracking app integrations, health app integrations, etc. We've started the process of integrating. I don't know if you've seen some of these, some of the technology that's out in the market at the moment, where you can just through a facial scan, get like a 30-second facial scan. You can get a heart rate reading, HRV reading, blood pressure reading. It's pretty incredible. It
That's
uses,
gnarly.
yeah. It uses a specific kind of technology that like detects from what I understand, it's detecting the light waves under your skin, and then from there can infer, well, the pulse rate under your skin, and then from there can infer like I said, a heart rate, a blood pressure level, etc. So that kind of data we have access to as well. And so when we took them through this, they then, if you extrapolate that out at a group level and you say, okay, cool, if we've got a 5,000 person customer, or a customer of 5,000 people in it, 5,000 employees, sorry, and we can get a view of how many of those people through this facial scanning feature in our product, how many of those people have high blood pressure, we can then use that and say, okay, cool, we'll go to the customer and say, we've got 20% of your people have high blood pressure, and these are the potential impacts from a health perspective. But then along with that, the associated risk is when you do your renewal of your insurance products with that broker, the cost could potentially increase, because if you've got a population who has a high risk of having hypertension, there's and they're potentially going to be experiencing a bunch of health-related issues as a result of that, and claiming off the back of it, the premiums are going to go up, which means that the company's going to have to fork out more cash next year to keep their employees insured. And so the broker can basically be this advisor to the customer to say, this is a data point that we've noticed is problematic. We've got this particular part of the Strove solution, I'm just using this as an example, available. Let's get this cohort of employees onboarded, and they can go through this digital program of helping them improve their health and well-being as it pertains to, let's say, blood pressure levels, as an example. So that's the kind of use case that could potentially come about as a result of that sort of partnership.
Okay, yeah, because now we're getting me into the part of thinking about B2B sales. I always hate saying that because I immediately think of like a LinkedIn influencer that's just been so tainted with like B2B sales on LinkedIn when you just say those words. But the simple point is it's like how's this going to improve revenue? How's this going to improve efficiencies? How's this going to improve like profits at like the fundamental, really basic levels? Like how's it gonna help us grow? How's it going to help us make more profits? Yes, there's a lot of the human elements. I'm not taking away from that. But I think about corporate employers who are very incentivized around creating shareholder value and obviously needing to constantly improve that, besides obviously being a good corporate citizen. And then we've got insurers, which is like a whole lot of actuaries, right? And I know how they like to think. And it's like, show me the numbers, right? So I think what you're underpinning within this is that on the employer side, not only is this, a great thing to do for the health and well-being of your people, and yes, we can obviously talk about, I'd love to talk about the performance and the engagement side of that in a minute, but just at a cost level, is doing this is going to reduce their spend on their medical aid and their health plans. It's going to reduce your spend on the same things depending on your benefits policy. And then for the insurer side, is that in terms of your claims, it's going to reduce that too. So kind of just from a financial perspective, everyone wins from this. And then on top of that, we get and this is a great thing to do.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's exactly right. So there's the health outcomes piece, there's the financial piece, in terms of cost saving and ROI. And the third is just sort of the general sentiments. And we've had a few companies um, just in sort of conversations that we and these clients that we have on board, and just general conversations that we have with them. Um, there's been one or two comments made around the product almost being seen as like this way to, I guess, both attract and retain an employee base, particularly the younger employees. Um, so, and I guess that kind of ties into the financial ROI side, because if it's easier to recruit and then retain, there's a cost saving there. But that's more like, it's not necessarily like health outcomes related. It's more like um, people related at a broader level. So um, there's a few different benefits that come with it.
Okay. And I guess now the business model, right? And the revenue model. Who pays you? Now it's always the employers. What's happening with the insurer side of things? Is it going to be and the brokers? Is it going to be them? Is it opt-in user base? I imagine it's employers, or it was last time we spoke. Yeah. How's the business model evolved?
The business model has stayed pretty much the same since we last spoke. Um, in that so from a corporate employer side, it's always funded by the employer. From an insurer's perspective, it's, at least in um, the companies that we work with now, it's all funded by the insurer. Um, on the broker side, at least in the conversations that we're having, it seems like it would also be funded by the broker. There are one or two conversations where that we're having where the broker is going to introduce us to a couple of their corporate customers, and then the corporate customers would fund it. But it's always funded by a company, and then it's made available for free to the end either member or employee. Um, the difference in terms of the business model outside of that is not much, other than we've introduced more products into the business, which we still charge on a per person per month basis. And but there's like 6 products now versus when we were chatting. I think we only had one or maybe two. So you can essentially, what we're trying to do is, particularly as a big corporate, we don't necessarily or I'm sure we don't necessarily just like want you to only have an off the shelf solution. Because I think companies are just starting to get a little bit tired of that. So we want to be able to offer something that is a little bit more kind of bespoke to a company's requirements. Um, and what I mean by that is, I guess there's a few different things that we can do. There's everything from certain features being switched on or off, depending on what a company wants to make available. There's like, we can white label our products. We can do things around like customized reporting, all that kind of stuff. And we can do that. We've built the platform to be able to do that, so we can do it pretty easily. Um, and so that's like one of the additional products that we would then bring into the fold from a pricing perspective. So there's certain features that we're charging for, and then there's also like this like customization piece as well, which is not really stuff that we were doing, I think, when we last spoke.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the nature of having lots of products and lots of features. But I also really like that point, because I imagine it would have been quite tricky to say, hey, here's like the core package, and if you want to opt in for the different employees, like there's these options that they can do and they can opt into, and it just creates a lot of complexity to almost give them that choice, but to almost do that consultatively in terms of like this is linked to your employee value proposition. Like what do you want to do? What do you want to be in terms of a benefits perspective? We can gather some data, and it's like, I think also the upsell opportunity is really there, because it's like, hey, like, this product can also really help with a lot of this data that we're seeing. So that makes a lot of sense. I think last thing that I want to really get onto in terms of really understanding the almost external interface of the business before we go really internal is, let's use me as a practical case study and example. Let's say I'm a user of Strove. like, let me just chat to you about my lifestyle for a minute, right? So I have musculoskeletal problems, specifically in my lower back. A lot of this was generated through rowing in high school. So whilst I was growing, I was putting a lot of pressure on my discs. Doesn't help the fact that there's also then a very much a desk jockey lifestyle, doing lots of remote and virtual work. But now how I'm managing that is like weekly one-on-one Pilates, got a strength and conditioning coach, very like careful around managing my health because of the pain I've been through has been quite significant. But lots of improvement there. I also play golf. I'm in therapy once a week as well. So that's not from a treatment perspective, that's just from a self-actualization perspective. And in terms of nutrition, like I'm pretty healthy. Don't drink as much as I did in my early 20s. So like that's just a bit of a high level view on me. But I'd say where my biggest pain is, quite literally, would probably be my lower back and managing that health. So what I'd want to know is, as a user on the kind of platform, especially if I was looking at my employer, like what would this kind of experience be like for me? Like how intensive would the onboarding be, and how much data would I need to give? How much can I make this feel like it's unique to me, versus me filling out surveys? Like, yeah, what's that user journey and experience like for me? And use me as an example.
Sure. So I could talk to you about it conceptually because we're still in the process of building that specific pathway out in our products. But from a general sort of user experience perspective, so it might be helpful to just kind of outline the structure of the product because it will kind of just paint a picture. So we've got what we call like our core behavioral change platform. And that is like what every company that we work with, every employee or member will come onto. And that's like the entry point. On that, you can do everything from track all your health data, you can do all like the facial scanning stuff I spoke about. We're going to be introducing like a body scan feature. So you take a 2-minute scan, a full body scan, also through your phone camera, and then it can pick up, BMI, visceral fat, all that kind of stuff. There's all the rewards and social features, all the nutritional health stuff, etc. So that's like what we call the core products. From there, we can then triage people into these pathways. Now, the way we
Okay,
would
so
do that,
let me just pause there before we like triage into the pathways, because I'm imagining there like this is quite like, also I'm thinking about like data privacy ethics. Like, I mean, that's also the next question that I kind of want to get into, and how that stuff is shared, because this is quite private and vulnerable. I'm imagining if there's going to be a phone scan and stuff like that, and you want to pick up my BMI, I've got to take my shirt off, and I'm sending it to this company, and it's how do I know that this is also credible and stuff like that? I'm being like deliberately cynical, but I mean, like, but I think there's a
no,
lot of
for sure.
people like that this is, it's still a vulnerable experience, right? So how do you also build trust with the user in that moment?
Yeah. So maybe just to make a comment on the body scan side, so you don't actually have to take your clothes off or your shirt off. You can just
Good,
wear
that's
like
good to know.
well put into clothing. Yeah, exactly. So you don't need to do that. I guess as if there's a few different things. So the first part is obviously your use of the platform is completely optional. No one's forcing you to use the product. So that's like step one. Step two is we we never we never report on individual user data to an employer or to an insurer. All the data is aggregated and anonymized. So you're never going to be able to attribute a data point to a specific individual. And we make that very clear both in the onboarding process as well as, you know, throughout the process of someone establishing a connection to a wearable device, whatever the case would be. So it's made very clear that this data is never shared at an individual level, but it will be aggregated and anonymized with all the other people in your organization for analytics and reporting purposes. And so we do get that question a lot. And maybe just to add one additional point to that, I think the data collection piece, it's there to serve the end user. It's not for us to, um, it's not necessarily to benefit us as a company. It's to empower someone with access to health data that they can use to like actually get a view of what their health and well-being looks like. And so we do make that pretty clear. Um, but it is something that gets asked frequently, as it would to any person working in any other health business, really, particularly health tech, because the data is going to be relatively sensitive. We aren't majority, I'd say like 95% of the data that we're collecting is more like lifestyle. I would say like lifestyle / health data. We're not really collecting like clinical data. So there's no like, I don't know, genetic data, diagnostics, any stuff like that. We're very much more on like a sort of lifestyle side. We do collect a lot of different data points, or can collect a lot of different data points, but we're not necessarily like a clinical health platform, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. Why? Because I mean, if you're going to be in like if you're in the preventative side, the best data that you want to collect is lifestyle. If you want to be in the secondary treatment side, then obviously then you want to start collecting clinical data. Yes, you can get clinical data earlier, but like that's the stuff that predicts the clinical problems is the lifestyle stuff in the first place. And also the fact that if you're not shifting behavior in the user, no one's going to win. The user's not going to win. Then the employer is not going to benefit from the shift in employee health outcomes. The insurers, the brokers, they're not going to benefit as well. So at the end of the day, everything's built for the user around them that they can really, as you say, manage their own health in a quite a comprehensive way. And this is for you, and the whole user experience feels like you're in charge. This is yours. This is totally private and secure and confidential, and it's entirely up to you. Don't get me wrong. We've put a hell of a lot of behavioral science and thinking into this to make sure that you actually use the thing, but it's for your benefit.
Yeah, so I mean, it is a good question, but like I said, it's definitely something that's we thought about around the beginning and are very conscious of. So yeah, so maybe just to go back to your question on like what the actual general experience would look like
Yeah.
on
So now let's go to the triage thing.
so what I explained to you now is kind of what we call like the core behavioral change platform. And then from there, if we see that, like I said, I use the BMI example. If someone has a BMI of over 30, we might, suggest to them that they enroll in a weight wellbeing program on the product. If someone is reporting to have, like, let's say, low back pain as an example, and again, the specific part is all conceptual at the moment, but I'll just give you an idea of what it would look like. We would suggest to them that they enroll in an MSK program. Now, it's a combination of content, like exercises and rehab stuff, and access to a physio virtually. At least that's the way we're thinking of designing it. So you can get like virtual support um, from like a physio, like a practicing physio. And then you also will get guided through a series of modules around, there will be stuff you need to read, stuff you need to do from like, let's say, an exercise perspective or a rehab perspective. And um, it's all based on what you would call, I guess it would be like, let's say, an 8 to 12 week program. And you would progress through each week of content, modules, exercises, rehab stuff with the support of a physio who's basically just like monitoring progress virtually. So we would have like a provider dashboard. So the physio would get access to, assuming that you want them to be sort of supporting you in your journey. This can be done without a human in the loop. You don't necessarily need to have someone guiding you, but if you wanted, the idea would then be to give someone um, access to a physio, and then they can support you on that journey. So it's very much like progression based, week on week. There's going to be certain modules of content you need to consume, certain tasks you need to do, certain exercises, etc. That's at a very high level. That's like conceptually what it
So
would
it's,
look
it's
like.
very like learning design orientated as well.
Yeah, yeah. Along with like obviously specific exercises, etc. That would be tailored to sort of what you are trying to achieve.
And you've
like the
gamified
the
quite a
the
bit of
tech.
this as well, like, 'cause I remember that
Yeah,
being a
yeah,
feature right in the beginning.
yeah, yeah, 100%. So I guess the key thing is making it needs to be relatively lightweight in terms of, like, you don't want to overwhelm people with content and features and to-dos and all that kind of stuff, because then the drop-off rate is going to be quite high. It needs to be like a slower progression. So and what comes with that is a relatively lightweight design. So we don't bombard people with all these things that they need to do in the first week of being enrolled in this program, because yeah, obviously, like, we don't want people dropping out in week one, because then that kind of defeats the point of what we try to achieve.
So I think to avoid some huge rabbit holes and lots of detail about your business, because as I'm super fascinated. I think before I move on, because I'm wanting to obviously understand a little bit more about your internal growth, your people structure, like for a whole bunch of other questions there. Um, Actually, before I pass the mic on to you, I do have actually one more question. Right, I know that you're based in London, right? And a significant part of your team is based in South Africa, right? Before we get into just the internal cultural, structural dynamics of that, what's been like the growth choice there, right? Are you targeting the UK, European markets? Are you targeting US as well? Is it specifically South Africa? Like, which geography have you decided to focus on? Because I know it was a personal choice to be living in London, not necessarily a business one. Correct me on that. But yeah, but how are you managing which geographies you're growing in based on the distribution of your team across the two countries?
Sure. So I'd say the choice to be here was both personal and work related. So the two kind of went hand in hand. The timing um was like part personal, and then it's sort of also just aligned with what we were trying to do from a work perspective. Um, so I guess being here, it's definitely a little bit easier than being in the US, given the structure that we have, because we've got a team based in South Africa, so the time zone is like, at most it's 2 hours. Right now it's currently there's an hour difference, so it's really not difficult to manage. Um, and it obviously being here, it gives you access to, or easier access to, European markets. And I mean, the UK is massive. And there's this big drive. So recently the NHS put out this 10-year like transformation plan from a health perspective. Um, and it was, yeah, it was super interesting reading it, because a lot of it kind of ties into what we are doing and are going to be doing from a product perspective. Now, the NHS is like the fourth or fifth biggest employer in the world. Um,
Well,
and
I
they've
didn't know
got,
that.
yeah, it's like a couple million people or something. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it is ginormous. Um, and so there's a huge opportunity for us, particularly off the back of the initiatives that they're gonna be driving. A big part of it is, I mean, preventive health was late. I'll send you the paper after this, but because it is quite an interesting read. Like
If
preventive
anyone's
health,
curious, what could they Google? What could they search online
just
of this?
search like NHS 10-year plan, and
Cool.
it will come up. Um, and yeah, a big focus is, I mean, preventive health was kind of littered all over the paper. Um, the personalized components to health and well-being was also all over the paper. AI is obviously was also, it's going to be front and center. Um, so I think with that initiative, outside of like the UK obviously being a big market, there could be a big tailwind for us as created off the back of that. And so yeah, and I think maybe just to answer your question around like the team being, so if we do have a team in the UK, um, it's a bit smaller than South Africa, obviously, at least for now. Um, a lot of the team is actually mostly based in Cape Town, so I do travel back and forth quite frequently. Um, I guess from an investor perspective, obviously South Africa has a whole bunch of amazing VC funds, but also being here, it gives you access to to a big network as well. So there's a few different benefits that come with it.
So on the topic of health and health assessments, right, I've got something just like Strove. It's nothing like Strove, but we've built something called the Founder Roadmap, which is an app that is entirely for free, no email, no sign up. I'm not trying to build a list. I'm trying to add value with all the insights that I've gained from the podcast. But really, it's a scale-ready scorecard to see where your business is leaking cash, how you can put together a recovery plan to address those leaks in your business, but also find out how you can put together an execution plan customized for your business for scale. Sounds like a lot of work. It's going to take you less than 15 minutes. The scorecard is 7 minutes to complete. You're going to get immediate assessment results. Again, no email sign up. So all in all, in 15 minutes, you'll find out where your business is leaking cash, what to do about it, and build a customized roadmap to get through this in the next 90 days. If you've been enjoying the insights from the podcast and you're now ready to take that into action, go to roadmap.metavolve.co or click on the link in the description below to take 15 minutes to get your scale ready score and build your execution roadmap now. I mean, man, the NHS side of things is obviously super exciting. And I think the timing is probably quite interesting for you just in terms of the growth and traction that you're getting is, yeah, just with the users, then obviously on the employers, now the brokers and the insurers getting on board as well. It's kind of the next step really would be at a kind of large scale health management. So that would be I don't know if that'll be episode 3, 4, or 5. But I expect to do that on your private yacht or your private island when that happens. Um, uh,
No, I think more
but
like but not in Tesla. I'll just get myself a nice bicycle, a good pair of running shoes.
there we go. How has your team grown in the past couple of years since we last spoke? And where has that growth been in employee basis? Been mostly on the London side, been mostly on the Cape Town side?
Sure. So the team is predominantly split up, well, mostly split between majorities in Cape Town, and then we've got a team based in London. We do have our chief medical officer who actually sits in Johannesburg, but the majority of the team sits in Cape Town. In terms of the actual splits, I'd say probably half. Yeah, it's at least half is product and engineering, and the reason for that is a big focus of ours. I mean, particularly as we go further upstream in terms of the size of the companies that we are serving, being more like enterprise focused relative to SMEs, the feature sets and like just the general breadth of the product capabilities, they need to be a lot broader. So what that means is that there's just more stuff for us to build, particularly at this part of our journey. So that's part of the reason why a big part of the team is still product and engineering. As we go forward, particularly over the next 6 to 12 months, we'll continue to expand the engineering team out. But the go-to-market side, the marketing side, etc., is a part of the business that we've got a relatively small team within. But in order to take the business to the next level, that would be outside of engineering. That would be kind of where we spend our time focusing our recruitment efforts. So.
Okay, I'm super curious about that because I'd imagine naturally a SaaS business with targeting employers, there'd be a large like customer success account management side of the business, but yours is predominantly product. I mean, this says a lot about what you've deliberately built as clearly quite an intuitive platform, but you know, so just tell me about the kind of like what the structure of your business looks like, and is there a deliberate split between London and Cape Town, or just kind of like we've got 2 talent pools that will look and wherever the best person is, if they happen to be in South Africa or even Joburg with the chief medical officer, or if they're in the UK, so be it, right? Be able to pick the best of both.
Yeah, so we definitely don't really bias in terms of location or geography in terms of where we want to bring people into the business from. So I think it's really just a matter of where is or who is the right person to bring on, and can they execute in the way we need them to execute. And if they're doing that from the northern suburbs in Cape Town or somewhere in Joburg or somewhere in London, it doesn't really matter. we do obviously value FaceTime, and so we have offices in Cape Town, we've got offices in London. We try and get people into the offices fairly frequently, but we also, like, if people want to be at home and just be executing, that's also totally fine. We do. So we brought on a head of people, like, it's probably about 18 months ago now. And more recently, she's taking on a role of heading up well-being within the business as well. So looking after the people
Walking the
outside, but
talk,
also looking
nice.
after the well-being. Sorry?
Said walking the talk, nice.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and so she's helped us a lot in terms of, if we don't get people together in the office 5 days a week, we make an effort to make sure that we get everyone together to go and do something outside of work, which is also great from a culture building perspective. It takes people out of the work environment. It just allows them to connect in a different setting. And so we're pretty intentional with that. And yeah, and then what we found is that this hybrid structure, it does work for us. We do need to be pretty intentional about how we communicate with each other, because if we're not communicating efficiently and you're not all in the same place, there will be breakdowns in communication and context will get lost, and knowledge will slip through the cracks, etc., and people won't be in the loop. So we have to be pretty intentional with making sure that doesn't happen. But having this structure in terms of where the team is distributed and how the team is distributed enables us to bring on the best people sort of wherever they are.
I mean, dude, if you brought on a head of people about 18 months ago, you're saying that your team has basically doubled in the past 12 months. You're talking between the 10 and 15 person mark is when you brought on a head of people. That's extremely proactive compared to how a lot of other people do this. Talk to me about that thinking, right? What was the thinking that this was a prioritization for a role? What was the kind of person that you were looking for? Like, how did you even describe what the job was for what it is that you wanted? Yeah, just talk to me about that, man. It's not something that people often do at that size.
I guess the primary reason was, at least on my side, we were at this point, we were trying to grow as a business, get the right people on board. We were It was just that there was people stuff that was ultimately falling on my place, and it was affecting my ability to execute on other things. So it was more a decision around me taking stuff off of my plates I could execute on, sales and capital raising, stuff that's really going to help propel the business forward, instead of me sorting out contracts for the team or dealing with a specific HR issue or whatever the case may be. So it was an intentional decision to make sure that I had time to really, grow the business as quickly as possible. And it just happened to be that the woman who joined, we had been building a relationship with her for a while, and she's an amazing woman, is kind of the mother, indirectly, to a lot of people on the team, and takes good care of a lot of people on the team. Well, the entire team, I should say. So it wasn't, it kind of just happened sort of naturally. There was, we had this need, or at least I had this need, in terms of bringing someone like that on. And she was in our world. We had actually done some work with her. So she was previously at a HR consulting agency, and we had done some work with them to, I can't remember if we actually ended up getting customers on through them, but they wanted to sort of take our product and see if it was interesting to their customers. And so that's kind of how we got introduced to her. And then they had been building a relationship that way. And then it sort of just naturally progressed into this role within the business, which has been amazing and super helpful. And it's taken a lot of stuff off of my plates, which is, yeah, particularly at that time, where the business was at. I was doing a lot of different things, and so I was doing products, I was doing sales, I was doing yeah, a lot of different things, which I still kind of am to this day, but it was even more so back then. And so at that time, it was important that, if I could take at least some of that stuff off my plate, particularly the people stuff, it would have just been an unlock in terms of capacity and time, which I could spend elsewhere.
Yeah, got you. Makes sense. On the culture side and the communication point of view, right? I'm very curious around because I can understand when businesses are fully remote businesses because that's stuff that's baked in from the get-go. Also, when it's like fully in-person businesses, you're both at the same time, right? And it's not like you're hybrid. It's like you've got offices in just two different locations. So, I mean, that's a relatively I wouldn't say unique setup. I mean, there's a lot of businesses in the world that've got like the multiple geographical offices, but it's something that's you had to solve quite early on in your journey. So yeah, how have you managed to build culture, be intentional about the culture that you're building across both, make them feel like they're part of the same team, they're part of the same culture as well, and getting the same message, seeing as you got the founder and CEO in London, but then half the team sitting in Cape Town. Yeah, talk to me just about the culture building, the communication side of things, but really just making people feel like they are all part of something that is the same.
I think the first thing is just general sort of transparency into what's going on from a business perspective and giving people access to, yeah, just like really what is happening at a fundamental business level so that everyone is in the know. That builds freaking elements of trust. So that's we try to be relatively intentional about that. So in our town halls, we'll kind of open up the business and give people sides of sort of what's happening and how things are doing. From a I guess from a cultural perspective, I think given the kind of business that we're building and like our value proposition and mission as a business, there's almost been sort of this natural selection of people that have come in for the most part that are already sort of living the values of what we're preaching, like being super active, looking after themselves, etc., etc. And so, from that perspective, because we've built that culture, people are more aligned with the mission of the business. So it's easy to get people bought in to what we are trying to achieve and help people with, which is really helpful from a cultural perspective. And then in terms of the team being split and how we manage that, I think, I mean, like I said earlier, I do go back to Cape Town frequently. I'll spend time with the team. We'll go on runs together. We'll go on hikes together. We'll go and play golf together, whatever the case may be. So we are like very intentional about engaging outside of a work setting and not just having the relationship with the team be transactional. Yes, we try to be very intentional about that. And then, I mean, just to give you an example, end of last year, my family has a house out in Theobart's Cliff on the dam, and we took it was probably at the time there must have been maybe like 18 months, something like that. We took everyone there for 4 days, and we just bonded, bride, like we did a little hackathon, and we all stayed we were split between two houses, but we all stayed together for I think it was like 3 or 4 days, and we played a bunch of sports. We had one of our team members lead like a sort of a mini CrossFit session, which everyone got involved in, which was super cool. So we do a bunch of stuff like that as well, which again, it just like creates this connection outside of work, makes things not be transactional, and it really does help from like a cultural perspective, especially when we are working in like different parts of the world.
So on that, right? You're very clear about the bonding of the culture, the activities, living a healthy lifestyle, bonding through healthy activities as well, potential up ahead of people, everything that you've been talking about. How do you manage the tough side of leadership, in essence, of accountability, performance, productivity, delivering? How do you balance all of this? We have these bonds, these personal relationships with one another, but then still keeping people accountable to deliver at the same time?
Sure. So the short answer is it's not easy, because having difficult conversations with someone that you, uh, let's say, are friends with is never going to be an easy conversation to have. I would say, but obviously we have to do them. So I would say the way we do it is we do it with empathy, but we make it clear that there's a certain expectation that maybe wasn't met. And I think if you approach it in a way where you don't see it as being, or the other person doesn't perceive it as them being attacked, but rather, you know, being supported as to how they can do better next time, that's like a far better approach, and you're going to get a much better reaction versus, you know, calling someone out in a pretty horrible way to sound like a group call or whatever the case may be, on a public Slack channel, because that kind of stuff just never really works. And people
Well,
don't.
that's shame-based, and shame is not effective for anything, really.
Yeah. Yeah. But it happens though. Not it doesn't really happen in our company, fortunately, but I mean, I've got friends that work in other companies where it happens often. And like, it's incredibly demotivating and makes people like not really want to be there. So the way in which, and particularly in our situation, because we are all pretty close, the piece around making sure that you are empathetic and supportive is even more important. And yeah, we just find that if we operate that way, people are more receptive and they're more willing to make sure that they go the extra mile to not make that same mistake again, or miss a deliverable, or whatever the case may be.
Get you. Anything else on people, structure, internal?
I mean, there's people always say the team you build is, I think it was, you said this, I think it was that Vinod Khosla, and then people have, used this in their town halls and their recruitment meets or whatever, and kind of preaching home this concept of the team you build is the company you build, which is very true. I don't think I like really appreciated that to the level that I should have until maybe like 18 months ago. Yeah, I mean, it's just very clear that the more talented people you bring in, it's not like you get an incremental bump in productivity and business acceleration and growth. It's like a stepwise change if you bring one or two of the right people on, particularly from let's say like an engineering side, where like a sort of intermediate engineer versus someone who's really exceptional, the output that you can get and the impact that they can have on their business, it's not a 1 to 2x, it's like a 10x. And I didn't really, when I said I didn't appreciate that, I didn't put enough emphasis on it, I think, up until sort of around 18 months ago. And then we brought a couple people in who were that, you know, super experienced and really, really talented engineer or engineers, and we could see impact almost immediately as to what they had on the business. And so, yeah, I think going forward, I mean, particularly over the last little while, and even more so going forward, we placing just a huge emphasis on making sure that we don't just hire for the sake of hiring. Not that we were really doing that anyway, but being even more intentional about every person that comes in needs to elevate the company just like one additional notch, and they need to keep doing that. Otherwise, if you bring on someone who's not determined, motivated, hardworking, etc., etc., the bar just drops, and if you do that again, the bar's going to drop again. So you need to constantly, and like I said, it's a big part of our recruitment strategy is finding those people who can. And I'm stating the obvious, but like we've kind of lived it now, seen the impact they can have in person. So um, the the concept around making sure you're bringing people who can take your business to the next level is super important. And I think even more becomes more and more important as the business grows and matures, just because the impact that that person can have is obviously magnified. So
Yeah, 100%. And it's not just about the knowledge and skills that they bring. It's actually the fact that, I mean, if you think about any kind of sports team, is that like a person that's going to be a really high performer, a really someone who's really good at their role, is also going to have higher standards of themselves. They're going to have higher expectations, and it's besides the knowledge and skills that they bring, there just is a performance mindset and mentality towards the fact that it's like I pro- I do well and I produce well and I know I do. But with that is I expect that of myself, but I also expect that of the people around me. And so the biggest problem is that if you've got these very talented people in, and I say that deliberately because like with that is it's not just an innate thing that they have that they just happen to be good. There really is this, they are performers, right? They are top performers in what it is that they do, and that's a behavioral thing outside of just a knowledge and skill thing. But the problem is that when we accommodate for or tolerate people with lower standards of performance, lower efforts, lower outputs, immediately it drags those people down significantly
yeah,
because they aren't able to perform at their best because they don't feel like the team is carrying to their expectations. And and it's not about the fact that they necessarily lower their standards. It's just they get quickly disengaged and they get frustrated and they are probably going to be looking for other work simply just because of the fact that there's like a tolerance of lower performance within the business.
yeah, no, I completely agree. And in the impact that it can have, like I said, if you bring on a few of those 10x people, yeah, it is incredible to watch. So because not only do they, their own outputs is, you know, it lifts the business up. It's the fact that people see them within the team, see them outputting at that level, and they then feel, okay, I need to take it up a notch, in order to, you know, make sure that I'm not getting left behind. It is in a good way because it's, you would rather be around people that are going to make you want to work harder, you know, uh, just level up your game, which is good for everyone.
Spot on. So, Chris, I brought up the point of walking the talk a little bit earlier. When I know that we've spoken about the business externally, we've spoken about products, we've spoken about market users, even people, culture. Let's talk about you for a minute, man. Right? And I'm saying this because I'm not here calling you out, but it's also just an observation from this week. Is that you've been emailing me between 11 and 12 at night, right? And so clearly you're in a very busy season. But the point that I'm making, the question that I have is the performance standards that I know you have. I know that your prioritization of health, and I know what it is that you're doing. Right, it's just like this is not news to anyone watching this. This is just entrepreneurship. But how are you managing this in a way that you think is sustainable? How are you taking care of yourself? How are you balancing, the responsibilities of what you need to do and deliver in this busy season? With making sure that you're also practicing managing your health, but also role modeling healthy behavior to your team.
So, I mean, just personally, like my thing outside of work is running. And so that's sort of my outlets, both from like just a general stress management perspective, but it's also something that like it's just a huge passion of mine. So it's quite easy for me to, I'd say, switch off when I'm doing that, and
Yeah,
it
because you
does
also don't
help.
go for short runs either. Like, I mean, for people that don't know you, like, what's a normal run for you in terms of distance?
I mean, it varies so much, but like before our chats, I did maybe 7 or 8K this morning. So, but that was more just from a time capacity
Yeah, that's
perspective.
that's a very short run for Chris.
So I mean, it varies. But cumulatively, yeah, I mean, we started training for a marathon at the end of the year, like this week. This was sort of the start of our training block. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll do anywhere from 120 to 165K a week. on average. And so time-wise, it's not actually a huge investment. It's maybe like 11 hours or so of training. But I mean, particularly on a Tuesday evening when we're doing a track session, on a Thursday evening when we're doing like more threshold work, or on a Saturday when we're doing a session with the long run, those hard sessions in particular, it's actually incredibly difficult to think about anything other than the fact that you're hurting so much and you just need to get through this. So it's actually, what I found is that at least for me, when you're pushing like that, while it's uncomfortable, it's actually a really impactful meditative experience, because I mean, you're obviously well aware of this, but like the concept of meditation is like, or at least mindfulness is being without thoughts. So you kind of have this blank space, and that's sort of like the holy grail. The Buddhist monks talk about the fact that they could sit for 8 hours and not think about anything. It's just a white space, which for most people is impossible to get to. But I feel like when you're doing really, really intense exercise, you can achieve that state, just not by sitting down and meditating, but actually just by pushing yourself, which is quite a
Well,
cool feeling. So
those are more flow states than meditative states, but they appear very similarly.
yeah, I guess so. But the part around there being almost like no thoughts, I guess, is the similarity between the two.
100%.
Yeah. So just going back to pressure around, like, we're building a health company. Like, how do we make sure that we don't, you know, how do we make sure, I guess, that we're looking after ourselves and managing our mental well-being, etc. For me, it's sports and running in particular. And so that is what I do outside of work. And I structure my days around, not every day, but a lot of my days around training. So making sure that I train in the morning before work. I've got like a full work day, and then I train in the evening after work. And then, because I know I'm going to train the next morning, I do try and make sure that, one, I eat a relatively decent dinner so that I don't have an upset tummy the next morning when I go train. And then I'm also getting enough sleep. So I try and do that. I get it right like 80% of the time, maybe 85% of the time. But then there's definitely days when I will not be able to get to bed before 11 or 11:30, and that I might wake up the next morning a little bit more tired. But I think, because majority of the days I'm managing to get enough sleep and I'm exercising and I'm eating relatively healthily, I don't have like this residual fatigue and tiredness that's sort of hanging like a cloud over me. So if I have a bad night of sleep, the impact, at least for me, isn't that, in my experience, it isn't that bad. So I can manage through it and be fine. So when I was messaging you at whatever it was, 11, opposite 11, I was kind of fine the next morning. So, and if I need to sleep in, then I will sleep until 7, hop a 7, and I might train a little bit later in the day or whatever the case may be. So the days I try and keep them relatively flexible. Where I can, I would like them to be structured, because it just brings a bit more stability to the day. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be like that. So
No, I mean, everything that you've just simply highlighted is just the fundamentals, right? If you're exercising regularly, if at like most nights you're getting enough sleep and you're having a consistent sleep pattern and circadian rhythm, your nutrition is good and you're being healthy, like you get just your baseline resilience is just way higher.
yeah,
Your ability to perform
100.
is way higher. So, and I think that the benefit of you being who you are and the way you are is like, that is just your default is that lifestyle. Whilst a lot of people, especially a lot of founders, right, those fundamentals will often be the first thing to go, because they will sacrifice their exercise time to work more on the business. They will sacrifice the time and effort it takes to make healthy meals to just get a quick bit of food in, just so that they can keep grafting. And the thing is that's when the slippery slope starts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's real diminishing marginal return to the point where it can actually be detrimental to both you and the business. So there is a balance. I found that so I did I did London Marathon at the end of April, and then I did a half marathon 3 weeks after that. And then for about 6 weeks, I kind of trained on and off because my body actually just needed a little bit of a break because kind of had been pounding it for the first 4 months of the year leading up into, or 5 months of the year leading up into those two races. And so I did sort of on and off training for about 6 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks. And on the days when I took a day off completely, I felt horrible, and I could actually feel it impact my work because I wasn't. If you exercise, you get blood flow to the brain, you get oxygen in your body, you release so much dopamine. There's like a variety of benefits that come with it. And so when on the days when I wasn't doing anything, it actually had like a material impact on both just the way I felt, my perception of, also just my kind of general perception of how things were going within the business. You know, one particular issue on a day when I've gone and trained and eaten well and slept well might be, somewhat insignificant. And then on a day when you don't exercise, and I would not necessarily be saying that I was eating unhealthy because I don't really do that all that much. Um, Although I do have a binge every now and again, I'm not gonna lie. Um, on those particular days, that same problem was like existential. So, but it wasn't actually. So it's interesting the impact that it can have from a mindset perspective. And so taking an hour to go and do that kind of stuff and look after yourself, the impact that it will have just on you as a person, on the business, the longevity of you actually being able to work in that same position over an extended period of time. I mean, the impact is kind of undeniable. And so I really don't think people place enough emphasis on it. It is so, so important. And I think that's also, I mean, it's a big part of what we preach and what we're trying to get into people's minds is like this concept of, just generally looking after yourself. There's, there's so many benefits that come with it. So both personal and professional.
So, I mean, on that, man, like we've got none of this stuff is news to almost anyone these days, to be honest, right? And so, yet we don't do it. Still to that point, it's like cool. It's Cam, Chris. I hear you, but I feel practically easier said than done, right? It's the fact that I've got a startup, I've got a small team, I need to raise funding, right? I still have my personal responsibilities, family, relationships, everything like that. Like, I hear you, but for some people, this might not feel realistic. And what I want to say is like, if you had an opportunity now to really, what would you say to a person like that? If you just had one chance to try and hopefully change their mind, what would you say now? No pressure.
So yeah, I think I don't want to call it like an excuse, but and I completely sympathize with people who just have so much going on. They've got a family to look after. They've got little kids running around. They've got the business that they're trying to run. They've got employees that they need to keep happy, and there's just like an endless list of things that they need to do. I would say, and as a result, they feel time starved, and they just don't feel like they can add anything more into their day. I would say it doesn't need to be this big thing where you now all of a sudden make this huge lifestyle shift. You deprioritize all the things that are on top of the priority list and that you have to take care of, otherwise things will fall over. It can literally start with like 10 minutes a day, just 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day of some form of like moderate intensity activity. Just like go get a skipping rope as an example and skip for 15 minutes. Wake up 15 minutes earlier. Everyone I say everyone, like, again, and I don't want to be unsympathetic here because I know everyone's situation is unique, and maybe some people won't be able to do this, and I completely appreciate that. But I think a lot of people can afford to take 15 minutes out of their day, wake up 15 minutes earlier, don't watch that extra 15 minutes of TV, whatever the case may be, and go and get a skipping rope and skip for 15 minutes, just as an example. You're going to get a sweat on, you're going to feel good afterwards, you're going to lose weight, you're going to develop muscle. That is then going to make you like a better person to your partner. It's going to make you a better parent to your kids. It's going to help you live longer because from a cardiovascular perspective, you're going to be fitter, you're going to potentially have lost some weight, you have more muscle tone on your body. I mean, I'm using a very basic example, but I think there's like there's this misconception that you need to just make this huge lifestyle change from doing nothing to all of a sudden needing to invest all this time, money, and attention into becoming fit and healthy. It's like it really is not. It does not need to be that intense. It's 15 minutes a day, and it doesn't even need to be every day. Like start off with like 4 days a week or 3 days a week. It's 45 minutes of your week, and just from that you could start making like real fundamental changes, which is going to impact like so many areas of your life. So that's probably what I would say to someone.
Love it. Yeah, I appreciate you kind of keeping it short and simple because it's like I think it's all these things where we know it. It's whether it's the diet or whether it's how I manage my time or the doom scrolling or it's just like don't put so much pressure on yourself. Just the one thing that's going to make the biggest difference is exercise. I mean, and it doesn't have to be intense exercise. You don't have to go for a 25K run, right? Just 15 minutes of exercise that will make more of a difference than anything else you could probably do.
Yeah, 100%.
Epic. Chris, now kind of looking at the next 6 to 18 months, right? How does the short-term future of Chris and Strove look like? How are you feeling about it?
Sure. So I guess from a business perspective, we, like I said earlier, I think if it only really feels like we're getting going now, which is exciting. And so I think particularly in the next 6 to 18 months, I think there's a lot of growth ahead for the business, both from just a customer perspective, from a learnings perspective, as we venture into a few different spaces in terms of the kinds of companies that we work with, all the product stuff that we want to build. So I think, yeah, it's going to be a period of a lot of growth and a lot of learning. And I think it's just taking, so we were like a scrap startup, and we got to like 10 to 15 people. Then we were a little bit more sort of formalized as a business. We're like 23 or 24, 25 people now. So still very much a startup, but now we've got, functions within the business, and the functions have clearly defined KPIs. We're becoming a little bit more of like a company. And I think the next step is, how do we go from, being the smallish company to a more established player in the space in which I guess within the markets that we operate. And that's a combination of bringing bigger customers on board, growing the team, bringing more experienced people into the team who've operated in some of the spaces that we're wanting to move into. So yeah, I think it's like a lot of growth and learning that's going to happen. And yeah, I think the rate of change in technology as well as it's presenting a lot of interesting opportunities for us in terms of we can now build and do stuff that people haven't really thought of before and aren't doing. So there's a lot of interesting innovation work that we're going to be doing. And yeah, I think just in general, it'll be a hectic and busy, but exciting sort of 6 to 18 month period.
Nice, man. Well, I'm really excited for you, and I'm excited to follow the journey. And I guess just to finish off, like I usually do, what's the one question that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you that you'd like to answer now?
Sure. That's a good question. I actually got asked this on here in the chat that I was having with a friend of mine the other day around, should everyone start a business and do their own thing? Or is it very specific to the kind of individual that someone is? And maybe just to answer that question, I think if you were to tell me when I started all the stuff that you would have had to deal with, it would have probably freaked me out to the point where maybe I would have said, no, I don't want to do this. So the kind of ignorance is this concept is definitely holds true. I would say I was like reflecting on that question that I got asked, and I definitely don't think it's for everyone, but just because you don't necessarily need to be the person that starts the company, you can be that person who joins super early and can assist someone and work with someone in building out that journey, but without you necessarily needing to take on all of the stresses that come with being the person that that started that particular business. So yeah, because I think there's like this misconception around the fact that, I mean, you'll know this, but starting something is way harder than anyone kind of makes it out to be, and you don't really know it until you kind of living in it. And so yeah, I think people need to be really drawn to wanting to do their own thing. Like, definitely don't just go and do something for the sake of doing something. But there's also, you can get almost as much out from an experience perspective, upside perspective, whatever the case may be, by joining a company early on, and working with the founding team to build their business out. You don't necessarily have to be the person that is going and starting the business. So yeah, I'd say that's maybe one thing. It's just I was reflecting on it the other day, so I thought it might be worthwhile bringing up.
Well, thanks for sharing, man. That's the one of the most unique takes I've heard on this question of considering entrepreneurship, should I start? So thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your story again, man. I'm especially excited for what's going to happen with you in the next year and a half, and hopefully with the NHS. I'm gonna hold you to that. Maybe it won't be a yacht or an island. Maybe I'll just we'll get a tandem bike and we'll just have a ride together and just accelerate. But cool, man. Thanks for being on the podcast again, and excited to keep following the journey.
Also, thanks so much for having me. Yeah.
Now that you've listened to the full scaling journey of Chris and Strove, it's time to talk about yours, right? So you probably heard me talk about this earlier in the podcast, but I'm bringing it up now. It's going to take you 15 minutes, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be some of the best 15 minutes you've ever spent. But I've built the Founder Roadmap. Built from 120 plus episodes of the podcast, I've made the Founder Roadmap, which is a 20-question assessment. So in 7 minutes, quick scorecard, you can see exactly where your business is leaking cash, you're leaving money on the table, but also what to do about it. The suggested practical next moves, these are proven plays from all the episodes that I've listened to, that you can immediately use as suggestions to implement in your business and build your own customized execution roadmap to really go from great to amazing, right? So take the scorecard now. It'll take you 7 minutes. The whole app will take you 15 minutes. There's no email, there's no sign up. I'm not trying to build a list. I'm trying to add value back to you and invest my time in you for investing your time into the podcast. So if you want to convert the insights that you're getting into action, then I think this will be some of the best time that you've spent so far. So thank you for listening to the podcast. Go to roadmap.metavolve.co to unlock your scale ready score now, see where that you're leaving money on the table, and build an execution plan to stop that in the next 90 days. I'll see you next time. Cheers for now. Click on the link, go in the description. Do it. Do it now. Bye.